This is Ari Koretsky, and welcome to Jews You Should Know, introducing the broader community to interesting and inspiring Jewish men and women making a difference in our world. Some are already famous, some not yet so, but each is a Jew you should know. And we are returning with our next installment in the bridge building mini-series of the Israel podcast tour from this past summer. And I'm releasing this episode in its original time on October 29th, 2018. And sadly, just less than 2 days ago, on October 27th, a Shabbat morning at the congregation of Tree of Life, Eitz Chaim in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was a terrible massacre of 11 Jewish souls, as well as injured police officers and others, during shul, during a bris ceremony. And besides generally feeling a need to mention it and to think about the memory of those whose tragedy is so fresh, I also thought it was quite appropriate because very often we find that in times of tragedy, in times of pain and difficulty, we come together. Jews of all different stripes and flavors and backgrounds tend to forget or transcend those distinctions and express the unity that often otherwise is lacking. And this time is no different, with vigils cropping up all over the country. I know on my own campus, one will be taking place very shortly, where I work at the University of Maryland, and many of my colleagues around the country are likewise participating in these kinds of ceremonies that bring together people from all different walks of Jewish life. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't have to wait for those tragedies? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could experience that kind of solidarity on a regular basis? And in many ways, that's what today's interviewee is all about, what he personifies as the founder of the Be A Mentsch project and a series of initiatives aimed at creating love, respect, unity among the Jewish nation. He is in effect perpetuating that ethic, not only in times of tragedy, but in the routine and pedestrian moments of everyday life. And perhaps this interview can inspire some of us in some way to inculcate those messages into our lives, even when the shock and pain of tragedies such as the one we've just experienced have receded, and we proceed with our daily existence, working to enhance our love of our fellow Jews, our respect, our embrace of each of them to our fullest potential. And now our interview, recorded in the lobby of the beautiful David Citadel Hotel in the heart of Jerusalem, with Moshe Kaplan. We are here with Moshe Kaplan of beamensch.com, here sitting in the beautiful lobby of the David Citadel Hotel in Jerusalem, very close to the old city of Jerusalem. How are you, Moshe?
Thank the good Lord.
Wonderful. So nice to meet you and to have you join us today. And the website name itself is a great tease, and it really kind of piques one's curiosity. But before we get to Be A Mentsch, let's talk a little bit about the Mensch behind that, and the story that brings us to this operation, to this initiative. And so tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your upbringing was like.
Okay, I grew up in a I guess at that time was a conservative Jewish background. My grandparents were all religious at some point, but my father went to Harvard Law School, and my mother wasn't too much into it, and more money, less Judaism.
Right.
And some of the things that went on, I would call it fake news. So that kind of turned me off. I went my own way. I was not really connected. You know, all my friends in those days, nobody married somebody that wasn't Jewish, but I wasn't interested in getting married at the time because I was going to medical school and I was avoiding the war in Vietnam, and that was the way to do it.
You have a deferment for school.
I went to boarding schools. My two brothers and I, we both went to boarding schools with, actually, believe it or not, one of the students became the foreign minister of Saudi Arabia.
No way.
Yeah, there were 7 Saudi princesses in our school, And the benefit of that being there is that we didn't have any pork in the school. So I had the merit to never have eaten pork because of the fact that there were Arabs in the school and the Arabs didn't eat pork.
That's so interesting. Where was this school exactly?
In Princeton, New Jersey.
In Princeton, the boarding school was in Princeton, and where did you actually live? Your family?
My family lived in Trenton.
Okay, in Trenton, which I guess was it a nicer area at the time? Now it's kind of not the best area.
Correct.
Got it.
Right. So there was a 5 street area that was walled off. That was the Jewish neighborhood, as you might say.
Right.
No, not religious, but Jewish.
Right.
And anyhow, I went off to college, medical school, internship, residency. And
What kind of doctor did you become?
so after I did a year of radiology residency, and then I went into medicine, and I became what was called it's called a psychoimmunologist.
Huh. Which deals with?
Basically mind-body medicine, as you might say.
Interesting. Very unusual, especially for that time.
Yeah.
Right?
So there was the holistic medicine started in California. I had a partner. We didn't like the name holistic because that sounded too flaky, and everybody's a holistic healer. Even if you just became, last week you were who knows what, maybe you were a used car salesman, and next week you're a holistic healer. But so we called our organization Wellness Medical Group, and that's actually the forerunner of how I got into the Be A Mentsch program, because as a doctor I was writing books. Came off of a grant that I had with a doctor at Stanford to write a curriculum for an ideal healthcare delivery system. The curriculum is still used in about 44 medical schools today.
Wow.
And some in Europe. And from that I wrote a book as a treatise on the healthcare delivery system. It was called Wholly Alive. The books of one of my patients published the book. He retired, sold the thing, that sold out, and that was the end of that. But it got me on television, and that's why I wanted to promote my practice.
Wow.
Anyhow, so
I'm curious what drew you initially to, mind-body medicine, integrated medicine, holistic medicine, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It was certainly, today I think that's somewhat in vogue.
Right.
But a few years back when you were in medical school, it may not have been,
I was always a heretic of sorts. I had a sign in my office: great spirits often encounter violent opposition from mediocre minds, which is a quote from Albert Einstein.
Right.
Albert Einstein was one of my heroes a little bit. My parents, one of their close friends was an ophthalmologist who was very close with Einstein.
Wow.
And at Princeton, matter of fact, he left him his eyes.
No way.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. A little bit creepy, but yeah.
And I was, I don't know, I guess, I don't know where it comes from, but I never went the straight path.
Yeah.
Until I followed my parents' instructions. The way to become a happy person is to become affluent. So I had, after I finished my residency, my partner and we opened in San Francisco. We had 7 offices. We were making good money. I had a Rolls Royce and a 308 GTS, and I'm 32 years old. And I woke up one day and I said, "Now what do I do?"
Right. Well,
So-
why wasn't healing people enough of a satisfying mission at that point?
I can't tell you the answer to why it wasn't enough, but I'm very disciplined and organized, and I had my office down to a science, as you might say, in a way. And it was just more money, and that wasn't enough.
Right.
I was healing my patients, but that wasn't enough either, I guess.
Right. Or you were looking for something even more.
I was looking for something more.
What kinds of specifically practices did you incorporate? I imagine you also did traditional medicine.
Yes, we were today they would call it complementary.
Complementary.
Medicine. Right. We did all traditional stuff. Mostly I was focused on cancer. And because of immunology.
Right.
Now it's starting to become more in vogue also, the immunological approach to cancer. And I was a forerunner in that respect. And trying to build the person up instead of shoot him with chemotherapy. And I was doing innovative things in addition to practicing traditional medicine. And I was practicing in San Francisco, where you can almost do anything. But there's a fine line between going too far out, which makes you a quack,
Right.
and too traditional in San Francisco, which makes you part of the military industrial establishment.
Right.
So you have to walk this fine line. So that's where I did a little bit, did some traditional and some alternative. I was using intravenous vitamin C, which now has been proven to be effective in cancer. I was using that 30 years ago. I was doing a treatment called chelation therapy, which has now also been approved and proven to work, but at the time it was considered out there.
Yeah.
And I had people on diets, exercise. We had an exercise physiologist in the office, stress management, a psychologist, and that's what we're doing.
I think the largest critique that people have nowadays about it's complementary medicine or whatever it might be, it would be often they feel like there's a lack of evidence base.
Correct.
For it, and a few years ago, omega-3 fish oil was the big thing, and now my doctor just told me, well, there's actually not any studies for that. So like how
one of the things about medicine, if you've been on the inside of medicine, you find out that that's not only that true about. No, I'm not saying that I try to be very scientist based on what I did, and whatever I did, I tried to, as I said, I had some kind of science that was about it, but. I remember once a guy named Halberstam, believe it or not, he's not religious, but he was that's an important family name in the Jewish world. And he got killed in an automobile accident, unfortunately, but he was an editor of a medical journal that I used to read. And he said, how come all the things that I learned 20 years ago in medical school, the opposite is true today?
Right.
And I'm talking about breastfeed versus non-breastfeed,
right.
Radical mastectomy versus simple mastectomy, many things in medicine that are so-called the Bible change. Medicine is an evolving science. Medicine is of course is an art. It's really not. It's not just science. It's art. And of course you have to see what the biggest thing, for example, in cancer, in my opinion, is hope. Now, there's no book about that you can give somebody to say take this hope and come home in 3 days. So it has to be, and I saw many times in my practice where patients who some kind of distressful event was keeping them from having an effective response to so-called traditional therapeutics.
Interesting.
And that doesn't mean, like I said, that you can do anything. You can't do magnets and think that people are going to get cured. But there is some, and that's where I guess you'd lead to the neshama, the soul, the person's will to live, hope, all the things that you can give to people that are not in the textbooks.
Right. Right, very interesting. So you found yourself at 32 years old, very successful, at least materially, and with this wonderful, booming practice. But you felt sort of an existential emptiness. What did you do from there?
So what I did is I started having more time because I got my nurses and everything very organized that
So as you stopped practicing as much directly.
Right, no, I practiced, but I could limit my practice somewhat. Instead of having to work 18 hours a day, I was now down to the normal day.
Got it.
So at night, I'm available, and I had a day, it was an office practice, it wasn't a hospital practice, so I didn't have to run around 24 dealing with all these kind of emergencies. And I started reading books, and I always considered myself Jew. My family was Zionistic.
Yeah.
My father raised a lot of money for arms for the
Haganah.
For not the Haganah, for
Lechi Palmach.
Whatever. He raised money for arms for Israel before the Medina.
Right.
And he had opened the ZOA office in our town. And he actually got a letter with it's the same problem that happens today. He got a letter from Federation, because he had a big rally that he organized. Don't do this, you'll be blackballed in the community. And my father said, too bad. So he went and did it. And I guess maybe that's where I got some of that rebelliousness chutzpah from. And so my father always never had us believe that if we wanted to do something, we couldn't do it if we applied ourselves to it.
Wow. So you just were reading and reading, and
so I started reading about Judaism, and I had actually been to Israel in 1971 as a totally secular Jew. I had a friend who was he's one of the 5 most famous Israelis. He was the captain of the Israeli basketball team.
Wow, what's his name?
His named Tal Brody.
Okay, oh sure, I've heard of Tal Brody, sure.
Yeah, so Tal Brody, he's now like one of the biggest chesed people in the country. He's on the board of the Jewish Agency and then Nefesh B'Nefesh Lifetime Achievement Award, and he's got the Israel Prize. And,
all right, I've got to interview him next.
yeah. So, and
are you still friendly with him?
Yeah, sure. He wrote the prologue to my book. So he's the first goodwill ambassador for Israel, and he goes around the world and talks about Israel and the beauty of Israel, and so he took me around the first time I came, and I loved Eretz Israel. My parents said you can't go back there until you finish all your medical stuff because they're afraid I'll come and I'll never come back.
Right.
So
and they were right, just a lot later.
Right. Anyhow, so I remember the 6-Day War and going to rallies, and I was like I said, I was motivated, and not only as a secular point of view, but not as a religious point of view. So I sought out the Jewish community in San Francisco, and of course I didn't know that there wasn't much of a Jewish.
It was a very limited one, right?
Right. But when I went to one of the people's houses in town, and I called them, when I found out their name, and I called them up, and when they saw me drive up in a Rolls Royce, they said, we got to be interested in this guy.
That's right.
Maybe help out our community.
Right.
Anyhow, so I ended up becoming the president. I ended up slowly enjoying the community and the friendship of the people, and more seemed to me more real, and of course with emphasis on tzedakah or whatever, but it wasn't much more looked at people about what they were instead of what they are, what they do instead of how much money they have necessarily in their pocket.
Right.
And slowly I started doing mitzvahs, and one thing led to the next, and I realized I got to get out of San Francisco. I'm a single guy, and what am I going to do in San Francisco?
Right.
So I didn't want to go out with, I used to go to some of these federation dances and meet the same kind of girls that turned me off when I was growing up, and buy me, snow me, show me type of situation. So I thought about it for 6 months, and I said, do I want to go to Israel or do I want to leave America? And while I was doing this processing, there was a rabbi that came through San Francisco, and his name was Rav Chaim Freisworth.
Oh, sure. Funny you mentioned that, because just yesterday I was in Har Nof, and I was looking at a sign where they're building a whole synagogue.
That's correct, on
in his honor.
That's correct.
And actually, my mother-in-law was a cousin of his.
Oh yeah, what's your mother-in-law's name?
Her name is Borenstein, was the maiden name. It was I don't remember the exact connection, but is a cousin.
Okay,
he's the chief rabbi of Switzerland.
He was the chief rabbi of Antwerp.
Yes.
And he liked the Rav of Europe. And he was a person who Yerushalmi Bavli Baal Peh when he was 11 years old. When he was nifter, when he died, Rabbi Yosef said, I have no one else I can learn with anymore.
Yeah, he's a real genius,
but not only that, like he could do the pin test.
Yeah.
I could go on and on with stories about him. And anyhow, so he was coming through. He was going from Antwerp to Melbourne, Australia for Halukas Habayis of the Lakewood Kollel. He stopped in San Francisco. I met him. I asked him for bracha. He said, I'll get you a better bracha. So what's that? He called the stipler, which he was very close with, in the middle of the night, and got me a bracha. And the stipler said, sell your business and move to Eretz Yisrael.
Wow.
So that's what happened.
That's what he did. He sold this massive practice.
So I had a partner, and he wanted out also, and we ended up selling our practice, and that's it. I came to Eretz Yisrael.
How old were you at the time?
I was 40 years old.
Wow, so that's a big change for that time of life.
Considering I didn't speak Hebrew, basically didn't know. I knew about 3 people in the country. Wow. Didn't even know that you're supposed to live in a religious neighborhood. I thought everybody's Jewish. What's the difference where you live?
Right.
And what happened was, as God had it, I had a friend who was a rabbi in Los Angeles that had moved here.
Sure.
And he became a real estate broker here.
Okay.
And he showed me an apartment in a place called Har Nof.
Ah, okay.
And I never heard of Har Nof.
Right.
I didn't know anything about it, but I liked the view in the apartment, so I bought it.
That was it.
And that was it. And
You were his easiest client.
and when I came back, I went back to America to pack up my stuff and come back. When I came back, they were supposed to finish the place in a few weeks. The foreman had a stroke. They never even touched the place.
Oh my gosh, it was still under construction.
So I had to stay. It was almost finished, but I couldn't live. It wasn't livable. So I stayed with my friend who was the rabbi. And every day I used to go to Har Nof and try to bribe the Arabs.
Yeah, give them a little kick in the tuch.
Right, to finish my apartment. Anyhow, so what happened is finally I had to move in, but there was Rabbi Arbach from Machon Shlomo.
Okay.
There was only one bus in Har Nof in those days, so I used to stop by the bus stop, and he used to see me walking by every day. And he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm trying to get these people to finish my apartment so I can live here." So anyhow, he brought me into his father-in-law, Rabbi Rosenberg.
Sure.
And Rabbi Rosenberg asked me a couple of questions and blah, blah, blah. And I had one patient who was a frum. His name was Zev Robbins.
Okay, sure.
And Zev Robbins was a kind of a Talmud of Rabbi Rosenberg from Or Sameach when he was at Or Sameach.
Right.
So
later became a big philanthropist himself, yeah.
Right, so I guess Rabbi Rosenberg called him. He gave me, I guess, a skama.
He gave you a recommendation,
approbation. And next thing I was in Machon Shlomo.
Wow, 40 years old, so you were probably considerably older than the other students.
I'm the oldest person that ever came to Machon Shlomo.
Wow.
And finished 2 years. He was older than me by a couple months. He came and stayed with me for a month, but he didn't stay. He wasn't a full-time I
right.
stayed for 2 years in Machon Shlomo.
Wow. What was that experience like?
Well, learning more about, I was ready for it. So, I was ready to do what I did.
And you didn't, at that point, you had soldier practice, so you didn't have pressure to work. So you had time to just study and grow Jewishly.
Well, I had to accommodate to Israel. I had to deal with people, all the problems of living in a neighborhood that has no telephone, no water, no electricity. And,
oh my gosh.
And adjusting to a place where I don't speak the language, I don't know anybody.
Right.
And all those kind of realities, and still trying to maintain, whatever investments I had, and find out what's going on and get mail. I found out for 6 months I didn't get my mail, and I found out they were using zip codes, and the zip codes in Israel the same as in California, so every month my mail was going into dead letter boxes.
Oh my gosh.
And then I find out also that I moved into my apartment and the first Shabbos, and there was a tremendous rain, and I got water 8 inches up in my apartment because the Arabs had filled the pipes with tar and cement.
Oh my gosh.
So these are little kind of problems that you have to adjust to when you're come to another country. Anyhow, I decided I'm staying, and I don't care what it is, I'm staying. And slowly but slowly, I talked to people, and fortunately in Har Nof, there were a lot of former Americans, and I made friends, and I went to people for Shabbos, and so after Machon Shlomo, anyhow, I realized it was a little bit too intense. I went back to America, and I learned in the yeshiva in Passaic for a little bit, and then I came back to Israel, and I got married for a short time. That was a mistake, but I guess it's all on the path. The woman who made the shidduch for 3 guys in Machon Shlomo. All 3 of us got divorced.
Oh my goodness.
And then she got divorced.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a short marriage. It was we left peacefully. And,
was your plan to begin to re-practice medicine in Israel?
No. So somebody from America found me, and I did get a permanent license because I was involved with an organization where we used to train Israeli doctors in subspecialty training. So they gave me a lifetime permanent license, but I really was interested in learning. And so some guy who, I don't know where he found me, but he was from America, he said, "I want you to practice medicine." I said, "I don't want to practice medicine, I want to learn Torah." So we went to Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach.
The great sage at the time, yeah.
And see what he says. So he said, "Well, why can't you learn half a day and practice medicine half a day?" I said, "Well, I was never in yeshiva before." He said, "In that case, you just have to stay in yeshiva." So that was the end of that.
Wow.
And the other thing that happened was, shortly after I was here, I happened to be, as they were still doing construction, and a truck was going down the street where I lived, Kablan, and a boy ran out of the building, and the truck hit him, and he had a 12-inch gash in the back of his neck, had grand mal seizures. I was fortunate enough to be involved in saving his life.
Wow.
And I became a trauma doctor. So I was with a couple other guys in Harnof who had been EMTs in America, and some who had not been but wanted to get trained. And we started Hatzalah in Harnof.
Oh, wow.
And so I became the medical director, and I was doing that 24/7.
Wow. I interviewed Eli Beer, so.
Oh, yeah, I just sent him an email today. He's a friend of mine.
I also sent him an email today.
So I was involved before Eli Bear was involved. I mean, Eli Bear's involved since he's 12 years old, but I was involved in Hatzalah of Harnof started before United Hatzalah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. He only started when he became old enough to deal with it. Anyhow, he happens to be a friend of mine, and he's part of our project, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And he's a big Baal Chesed, and I actually spent Pesach with him this past year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyhow, so I decided, since I'd written this book in America called Holy Alive, I would write a series of essays in Israel where I would get people, and I called it A Holy Life. And one was about, I took the top from nutritionist, and I had him write about diet from Jew, and I had a barrel wine. Rabbi Kreisworth when he was here, called barrel wine, said, write a chapter for Moshe Kaplan, and I became very close to Rabbi Kreisworth. And he wrote one about how you should do with your money, and Rabbi Gottlieb wrote a chapter about philosophy, and Rabbi Tribitz wrote a chapter. We had all different aspects of how you drive, when you drive your car, and when you go in the supermarket, how a Jew's supposed to act, a religious Jew, and any Jew really. Yeah. So after the book, Rabbi Gershenfeld had a friend who worked with Wolfson.
Sure.
They liked the book, and they said they're going to send it out to all the Kiruv organizations in America. Nice. So that's what they did, and the book sold out. And so some people came to me and said, now you got to write a sequel. I said, I don't know what to do. So there was a boy in Machon Shlomo at the time. His name was Jake Greenberg. I just happened to see him now. He works in a fund in England because he married an English girl.
Okay.
And he worked for a publishing company, a Doubleday. And he was a smart guy. He went to Princeton, and he turned down Columbia Law School twice. And his parents were both doctors, so we had, so we decided we'll write a sequel. And the book was, and so what do we name it? Be A Mentsch.
Be A Mentsch.
And so the chapter, it says a psychologist and a psychiatrist and a Rabbi Twersky, and we had a Nathan Sharansky, and Rabbi Gottlieb, Rabbi Twersky, and all different aspects of being a mensch. So the book was published in English. I had a friend of mine who's a survivor who became a very, very wealthy American Jew and became a right-wing politician. I'm not politician, I mean supporter. And he happens to live in Indianapolis. He's the one that got Michael Pence involved in politics.
Wow.
And his daughter-in-law is Jared Kushner's first cousin. So that's how Mike Pence became the vice president of the United States.
Oh my goodness.
Anyhow, so he's one of my closest friends. His name is Hart Haston.
Okay.
He built the day school in Indianapolis.
Oh, okay, I've heard that name, yeah.
And he had published his own book about his own life called I Shall Not Die. And he sent me to his publisher, Geffen, and they published the book Be A Mentsch in English. And then somebody saw the book, and he said, well, everybody's got to be a mensch. Let's use this for Kiruv. Right. So there was a fellow his name is Yehuda Shine. Jonathan Rosenblum has written him up many times. I considered him as one of the Lamed Vav Tzaddikim in the world today. His wife's got a great job. He's an Israeli. And we had a program, a conflict resolution program created. And we created our mensch program. And what we do, instead of trying to teach people about kashrut and Shabbos right away, we teach them to be a mensch. And how do we do that? We have yeshiva bachrim that we have trained. No politics, no religion. We have no politics and no religion. And we have dialogue groups that go on with kids since we have a reputation that we're not pushing Shabbos and kashrut, we develop a chibur with them. And after a year of having connection with them, then we can teach them about Yiddishkeit. Right. But we teach them integrity, tolerance, respect, consideration, breaking down stereotypes, and obvious Yisrael. That's what we do. If we had more money, we could turn this country upside down. We have 80,000 kids waiting right now to go through our program.
Wow. So how does it work?
We go all over the country.
Is it school-based?
No, it's not. The schools have invited us too, and the Army's invited us, but we don't have enough money to. So we go all over the country. Now we're dealing with the Boy Scouts of Israel and the Girl Scouts of Israel, and we go all over the country and we run these dialogue groups wherever they're at. We've had the leaders have gone through our program, and that's what we do. And we had, so what happened, the other thing that kind of helped us is we hadn't made a YouTube, which was on Israeli television for 4 months. And when the girl got spit on in Beit Shemesh, and we won the grant from the Jewish Agency to deal with the problem there, so we started running these dialogue groups in Beit Shemesh. And slowly but slowly, here and there, and we got known. Like I say, so we're known for what we do, and people at the Hashemir sent us a letter. You're the only Charedim in the country we're willing to talk to. Mm. So we have letters. I should have brought you a brochure, but we have. I could email some of this stuff to you.
I'd love to see it.
And the book was published then in Hebrew by Yed Books, which is the largest publisher in the country. I went to see them. They said, we don't do these kind of books. We do novels and sell 3,000 and then go to the next one. So the guy says, well, let me read the manuscripts. So I send the manuscripts. 2 days later, he sends me, he says, this email. He says, this book is so important, even though we don't usually publish these kind of books, I'm going to publish it anyhow.
Beautiful.
So, and the book is, so that's it. We have the book, and we have our dialogue groups, and now we see the rifts that are going on in the Jewish world. And they're all based on, our analysis is they're all based on politics and religion. So we do no politics, no religion, and instead of looking for what the differences are, they had the 10 top supposedly experts that said how to resolve the rifts, and they said the religious people should become less religious, or the non-religious should become religious, or the right-wingers should become left-wingers, or the left-wingers should become right-wingers, and from our perspective, none of that will ever happen, at least not in the near future. So we said instead of looking at what people have in difference, we're going to look at what they have in common. And what they have in common is their Jewishness. So we have now 200 major Jewish organizations in America, the Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, almost all major Jewish organizations, the Federation, the Mizrahi, some Charedim, and we have this project called One Jewish People Project. And we're hoping to launch this project after the Chagim.
And what's that project about?
This project is that we're asking, it's basically on two levels. One is we're asking every Jew in the world to do a chesed for another Jew, an act of kindness for another Jew. And we have a scroll, a virtual scroll. We're finalizing, I think it will probably be housed in the Jerusalem Foundation. And the Jerusalem as the world center of Jewish people is focus, and every year Om Yerushalayim will be the end and the beginning, and people will be able to send in by email or Twitter or any other kind of social media or whatever they do, whatever chesed they did, and it will be basically put in this virtual scroll for perpetuity, so people, their grandchildren come here, they can see, hey, my grandfather took my grandmother to the supermarket yesterday, or whatever chesed, every kindness that they want to do. They opened the door for somebody, they said a kind word, they gave them some tzedakah, they took somebody to the hospital, they gave a kid a lunch, they helped a kid cross the street, they led a blind man in the right direction. Whatever act of kindness they did, they can send it in and we'll post it. So that's one thing. And then of course we're asking for people to make donations only for unity projects. In other words, there are many of these organizations people could donate directly to, B'nai B'rith, the Jewish National Fund, they're all part of these things. But we're not asking for donations to those organizations, we're asking that people donate to unity projects. The first 3 that we're going to be working on, of course, our dialogue program, and then we have 2 others. One is a lone soldier program, and the third is The third is orphans and widows in Israel. It's a special program for unity.
Nice. I have a great unity project, but I'll share with you off the air. Leave that as a teaser.
So anyhow, so that's we have United Hatzalah as part of the project. Yad Eliezer, Yad Sarah.
Wow.
These are all the biggest chesed organizations in Israel, and now we were told we have to get. Tal Brody said, listen, it's got to be everything transparent, and you got to get all a financial team because people take all this money and nobody knows what happens to it.
Sure.
So we got a CFO, and we got all the people that he wanted, an executive director, and we got Rick Schottenstein became a strategic advisor with me, and we got 4 honorary co-chairmen, Joe Lieberman.
Sure. Interviewed
him. Right, Malcolm Homeland.
Interviewed him. Let's see how I can do it.
Johanna Rabib, she was the head of the Jerusalem Foundation. She just left.
Okay, who I'm not interviewed yet.
And Arbib, and the 4th one is Abe Foxman.
Okay, so I'm 2 out of 4.
Okay, so Abe Foxman was recommended by, I just cold called Jerry Silverman, who's the head
JFNA, yeah.
Right, so I cold called him, and he said, yeah, of course we would join this program. So that was one. He recommended Abe Foxman. It turns Abe Foxman was very close with my cousin of mine.
Oh, that's funny.
Joe Lieberman, my brother used to be the chairman of AIPAC.
No way.
Yeah. And my brother passed away about a year ago.
What was your brother's name?
Lonnie Kaplan.
Lonnie Kaplan, okay.
So my brother was like this with Joe Lieberman.
Really?
When my brother passed away, Joe Lieberman sent me an email and said, I loved your brother.
Oh, isn't that nice?
So my brother was a big Baal Chesed.
Yeah.
And there's 2 ways you become the chairman of AIPAC. Either you give a lot of money or you raise a lot of money. My brother was a brilliant guy. Went to Harvard.
Right.
And he raised millions of dollars for AIPAC.
Amazing.
And that's why they made him the president. He could get money out of anybody.
Squeeze water from a rock.
He was so smart. If anybody gave him an objection, he would turn their objection against them.
Right. Okay. Too bad I couldn't get trained from him.
Right. I even myself. So anyhow, I was very close with him. We used to speak sometimes 5-6 times a day.
Wow.
And I even made the diagnosis on him.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
Wow. Yeah. He was living in the States still?
Yeah, he was living in the States. He's a lawyer in Princeton. He ran my father's law practice.
Wow. Wow. Did he leave behind any family? Or?
Yeah, he had a daughter. He has a daughter who's and some grandchildren. His daughter's a lawyer, top lawyer in Massachusetts. And she was voted one of the top 10 lawyers in Massachusetts. And he's got 3 grandchildren. And that's it. And he also, Joe Lieberman was very close, like I said, with my brother.
Yeah.
And so Joe Lieberman said, because of it was my brother's yurtzeit, around my brother's yurtzeit. When I asked him, I said, will you do this? I know him because he had solicited me for money for when he was running for vice president. Right. And I used to give him aliyahs because I used to be the deputy gab. I used to be the assistant gabbai at this hotel before I found Nate Sock.
Oh, at the David Citadel, okay.
Yes. So when he would come here, I would stay.
This is where he would stay when he would come?
I would give him an aliyah. So anyhow, I asked him, he said he would do it because of Lonnie.
Wow.
So Malcolm Homeland told me, he said, if you can get Joe Lieberman, I'll also do it. So as soon as I got Joe Lieberman,
you called Malcolm Homeland up. Yeah, 2 amazing people. 2 amazing people.
Right. My partner, the guy I work with in the Mensch, we scan the web all the time looking for thing, and he found Johanna Arbib, and I'm hoping she's going to come back next week. She went back to Italy. Well, she used to commute, but now she, finished her tenure. She resigned, but she accepted to be one of the co-chairmen, and she's hopefully going to help us. She knows she was raising $21 million a year for the Jewish Foundation. So,
oh my gosh!
So we're hoping that she's going to. She told us we need more women, and we said okay, and
sure.
More Israelis. I said okay, bring them in, and hopefully she's going to connect us with some people, and we have some other people working on some wealthy people. We need a break. We need one break with a good Gvir,
One whale.
one whale, and we'll piggyback that. My brother always told me, get your anchor tenant. So that's why I went after Federation, and here I went after Yad Sarah, because those are the two biggest chesed organizations in each country.
Right.
And once you get them, so then you go after the other ones. They, they slowly fall in place.
Yeah, incredible. So you're trying to launch this project after the
Right. So I'm around the
holidays.
GA, because the GA this year is the whole thing is about the diaspora Israel dialogue.
Ah, okay. So the idea is going to be that it's going to be a worldwide project.
So, right. And we're going to go, if we get enough money, we're going to try and get fundamentalist Christians involved, and also anybody that loves Eretz Yisrael, and wants to support Eretz Yisrael, we're happy to get them involved. Not in Judaism, of course, but in being a supporter.
Right.
On any, and they can also do deeds of kindness.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
And like I said, since it's no non-religious and non-political, so anybody can be part of the project, and we'll see where we go with it. In the meantime, hopefully we'll raise some money and be able to continue our dialogue programs, because we don't need a lot of money. I mean, from what money is from Jewish organizations, if we had $1.5 million, we could turn this whole country upside down. We could have dialogue things going all over the country.
Yeah. Do you feel like there are any other organizations that are doing similar kinds of things? Have you ever tried to partner with like an organization like Gesher or?
We've met. Matter of fact, when Gesher found out what we're doing, they panicked,
right.
And because they have their Unity Day.
Right.
But we have also Rabbi Goldstein, the
Sure.
Shabbat project. They're part of it. They have 1 million people. They panicked because they thought we were going to take their thunder. But they have 500,000 people. We have about 8 million people. I don't know how many will participate, but at least connections to 8 million people.
Right.
So, and we called ours One Jewish People Project, and let them do what they're doing. And
so what do your typical days look like now these days? You're
so I
working
didn't
on
get
this,
to one other major event in my life, which changed my life significantly.
Okay.
I told you I got married. I didn't tell you that. I got married to a Moroccan Israeli 13 years ago.
Okay.
And that's a miracle in itself, because she lived in Netivot.
Wow.
She used to design the dresses for the Abu Qatzer, the Baba Sali's family.
Wow.
She's a dress designer. And how would I never heard of Netivot, let alone heard of her. Anyhow, a woman came from America that I knew. It was a shotgun, and because her daughter had passed away, and she was helping her son-in-law, and she met my wife, and I saw her picture, and I said I want to go out with her. So what happened is we met, and of course she was also kind of fallen through the cracks, and she had a lot of 8 brothers and sisters.
Oh my gosh.
And they all got married. She went to Beis Yaakov, and they all got married young, and she didn't get married, so she got like lost in the cracks.
Left behind, yeah.
Right. And anyhow, so I met her, and it went well, and Baruch Hashem, we got married. And she was a little nervous because of the age difference, but we went to her rabbi, and we asked for Moshe Sternbach, and he said, Moshe Sternbach says, if you know the age, there's no problem, because we went to Rev Chaim Kanievsky, and the Rebbitzin said you shouldn't be that much difference in age. So we went to Rev Moshe Sternbach, and he said, if she knows and she wants to, it's okay. So my wife was nervous. We went to her rabbi, and we said, if he says okay, we'll do it, if not, not. And we went to a rabbi, and he said, the guy looks like a mensch. Marry him.
Be a mensch.
Even though I wouldn't call myself a mensch, but anyhow, so now my wife is, of course, one of the reasons she wanted to get married is because of children.
Sure.
Her time was running out.
Sure.
Anyhow, so we struggled, and we went through different tipulim, through different medical things.
Did you work with PUA at all?
And I worked with PUA.
I interviewed the director of PUA, or one of the directors, the other day. Yeah,
well, his name is Bornstein, by the way.
Right, the founder.
Right.
I interviewed the head of the English program, which is Rabbi Weitzman.
Oh, so Rabbi Weitzman is the one that I related to.
Wonderful.
He came and he's the one that I always met with and consulted, and he's a great guy. And anyhow, we went through many doctors. I'm a doctor. I always had one doctor. He's a professor in one of the medical schools here. Said, "You're wasting your time. You'll never have a child. Why go home and forget it?" But like I said, that means to me it's just another challenge to overcome.
Right.
And of course we did IVF. I mean, we're not going to have a natural child. Anyhow, Be A Mentsch, 2.5 months ago,
Wow.
we had our first child.
Oh my goodness gracious, little boy. Isn't that beautiful? Listeners can't see the picture, but it's a gorgeous little baby. What's his name?
His name is Chaim Shmuel.
Named after Rabbi Kreisworth?
Chaim is for Chaim Kreisworth, and Shmuel is for my father.
Oh, isn't that beautiful? Well, God willing, you'll have the great honor of bringing him up as a real mensch over many years.
I found out already. I'm in the process of making a zvul and a sachar for him because it turned out that I couldn't do it with my money because then it's not his money, and he has to make the zvul and the sachar. Well, it turns out from Rabbi Deitel. Do you know Rabbi Deitel?
No.
He's one of the rabbis of Malchum Shlomo, also a good friend of mine. And he told me, and my cousin confirmed it. My cousin's a lawyer in New Jersey, because it happened for him that if I'm on Social Security, my son is eligible for Social Security.
Wow.
So most people never happen because most people have their kids in the 20s and 30s. By the time they're eligible for Social Security, the kid's too old because it's only until he's 18. So I'm having my first kid. I'm already on Social Security, and so my son is eligible for Social Security now. So he's eligible to go to Social Security now from the time now until he's 18 years old. So I've already, through a friend of mine who runs I dominate, and the fellow who runs the dominates minion is Ari Wasserman, another guy worth interviewing. A guy who grew up in Los Angeles, went to Penn, Wharton.
Wasserman, yeah, sure.
Went to Harvard Law School.
Wrote all the books, yeah. And his brother Noam is the...
writes farm, halakha in the workplace.
Yep.
Anyhow, so he runs our Nate's Minion.
Where is that?
In Ramban, in Neitzach.
Okay, but you come from Arnof to the...
No, I don't live in Arnof anymore. I live down the street. That's why I could come here and meet you here.
Okay.
So my wife didn't want to live in Arnof. She has relatives in Arnof, but she didn't want to live there anymore. So we're living here. So he, through his Rav in Bnei Brak, brought me somebody who's a huge Talmud Chacham, who's a favorite son of Rosh Shalom Zalman Auerbach, and used to be Rosh Kollel. Anyhow, so as soon as I get my money, he's going to have a zvul and a soccer with him. Beautiful. And he's a constant source of nachas for me so far, Be A Mentsch. But my nights don't always we're just finally got up to the point where he's sleeping about 5-6 hours a night.
Wow.
And anyhow, so I used to be in Kollel in the morning and work on this in the afternoon. But now I have to, my wife also has fibromyalgia, so I have to help out my wife a lot. And so I had to stop Kollel for a while. I mean, I learned Daf Yomi, but I still continue that. But I had stopped some of the other learning I do other than in the house. Anyhow, so I'm trying to learn as much as I can on my own. And I do the project, and that's what I do, and try and run my financial affairs at the same time.
Right, beautiful. Well, it sounds like you have a lot going on, a lot to be excited about, and in particular this beautiful child and a family that you've waited so long to have. And again, God willing, he'll grow to be a source of great pride for you, and again, to be a real mensch, like the book says. That you wrote.
Amazing, because my mother's yurtzeit was a Tuesday. It was right after Shavuos. My brother's was Wednesday, and the baby was born on Thursday.
Oh, isn't that special? So beautiful. Well, he should be a merit to all of their memories, and through his beautiful actions and deeds,
Merit Hashem,
patterned after his father and all the wonderful role models in his life. Moshe Kaplan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
This has been Ari Koretsky on Jews You Should Know. Please visit us at JewsYouShouldKnow.com and subscribe at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you consume podcasts. Find us on social media at Jews You Should Know. If you'd like to become a supporter of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate that, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com. That's patreon.com/JewsYouShouldKnow. Finally, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review so that we can continue to grow and introduce many more people to Jews You Should Know.